I remember when I was in my 4th year of seminary, someone from the synod office came in and talked about synodically authorized lay ministers. I thought, that's interesting, isn't it? They said because there are not as many ordained clergy taking calls, and there's many churches that need people to serve them in a capacity as an ordained pastor would. So what we've come up with is some training. Someone from the congregation would lift someone else up from the congregation, like they do in many traditions, and appoint that person kind of a leader. And I, as a bishop, would give them all kinds of dispensations. They would be able to baptize and give communion and do all the things that an ordained pastor would do, but only in that one congregation. And I thought to myself, so, what have I been doing for 4 years? How come they get to do that? And it took me 4 years and I'm not even done yet. The expense, the time away from family, the time spent and all this stuff with internships, and that's just not fair, right? It should be more fair than that. Well, let's look at Peter and those uncircumcised people that shouldn't be part of the group. God darn it. They shouldn't be part of us. After all, we've been going through all the rituals our whole lives, and we've done all the things that we need to do, and we've gone through jumped through all the hoops, followed all the laws, and then you get these Gentiles who come traipsing in, and just all of a sudden, bling, they're part of the family of God without any kind of following the rules or becoming at least circumcised. And I'm sure the males are saying, yeah, I like this rule. I don't have to be circumcised for this. But God's rule was a little different. It still is. And so Peter told them the story, and that's how they did theology back then. And oftentimes now, they told stories, and there's a punchline to it. When I look at the sheet that was brought down from heaven for Peter to watch in his vision, and the Lord's voice was saying, kill and eat, and Peter was aghast. He's a good Jew. I follow all the dietary laws. I can't eat some of these things in here. Granted, some of these things were clean and some were not clean, all wrapped up into this one sheet. Well, God was testing him as always. There was always 3 times. I want to tell you 3 times, and you refused me 3 times. And it made Peter think about that. Well, why is God usurping his own laws and having me kill and eat all these things that, like reptiles, I heard that rattlesnake tastes like chicken, but I'm not so sure I want to try it. Or these lizards taste kind of gamey. I don't know if I want to try that either. I like turkey. I like chickens. That's fine. And deer meat is really good, But other things, I don't know. That's what God was saying. They're all together. They're all, as far as I'm concerned, they're pure. Because I created them that way. And so Peter bumps up against this wall of, but tradition says, but the laws say, and didn't you give the law to these people, or was it an extrapolation that they had made, and I'm not so sure. You go through the history of personhood, and there's always wars of something or another. There's always a civil war somewhere. And you're saying, well, how do you tell who the enemy is? We all look and act the same. How do you know? Why are we doing this? Is there a difference of opinion? Okay, how drastic is it? Is it worth it? But there's always throughout history, there's one people is pitted against another for some reason or another. So there's always distinctions made. Even in our own country, there's still distinctions made. And as we go through life, we create more. We sort of solve, but not really solve. We have the civil rights, and that is kind of going along, but not to the full extent it should be. Or women's voting in the women's place, sort of, but not really to where it should be. And now you have gays and lesbians wanting equal. Well, it's getting there, but it's not quite there. So we're making our things on our sheets. We're all people together, and we're making distinctions. And God is saying, don't do that. We all have this rational brain that we can think through things. We all have this animal brain, too, the amygdala, that, when something happens to us, sometimes we respond like an animal would, or an alligator. They call it alligator brain. We'll just snap and without even thinking and just react violently or harshly or something. But our higher functions will say, oh, wait. Take a step back, think about it, breathe, count to 10, what you have to do, and think about this. Is that the right reaction? Is this the right response? No, we're able to do that. As human beings, we're able to think things through. When I was at seminary, too, when I was on internship, we had one of the older gentlemen came out from the synod, and he was talking about what one word did I have for my internship, and I can't remember the word. But I thought, how do you boil it down in one word? And then I talked about my Norwegian-Swedish heritage, and he said, yeah, I had a Swedish grandfather and a Norwegian grandfather, and I remember we had a celebration, and my Norwegian grandfather was in the garage because they had something going on there, and so my Swedish grandfather was in the house, and he looked out the window and wait till the other grandfather left the garage so that he can go in the garage to make sure the two will never be together. Oh, and then we laughed about that, and I think, well, that's... back in the 60s, you don't marry a Catholic, And then I visit people in this congregation, and most of them are Catholic Lutheran weddings. Oh, but that must have been bucking the tradition back then. We were always making up distinctions, but we often can see through them and past them. And God is telling Peter, look past this other stuff. I'm giving you a new law. To love one another, and that means to go outside sometimes the boundaries of what you think is a law that should be followed, but oftentimes it separates and downplays and sometimes condescends other people who are not me. And so Jesus tells his disciples, God is glorified in me. God is me. This is the presence of God. I am the revelation of God to his fullest. Love each other as I have loved you and others that you think are unclean. I've been reading 2 Kings now, and I find that the capital of Israel was Samaria. What? Samaria, capital of Israel, the king of Israel was in Samaria. No. And I got to find out when the transition was, and Samaria was bad. But it's interesting how these things take place. And in Revelation, there is hope that all this stuff will be smoothed out. All this stuff will be made new. It won't make a difference anymore. A new creation, new earth, a new heaven. And the old will pass away. And because God is the beginning and the ultimate end, and all that's in between. And so when we think about our present moment and our past and the trials and tribulations that we've seen and we'll probably go through, we know that God is still present with us always and never lets us go, no matter what, no matter who we are. Yes, we make distinctions. Sometimes it's easier and more comfortable for us to bond with people like ourselves. But sometimes it's good to push outside and be a little discomforted and to experience another, or another's life, or another's experiences that are different from our own. Just to get a different worldview. How is God working through them? As we know, God works through us too. So we know that the new heaven and the new earth is coming to us. The world doesn't simply explode and expire, but it comes and renews. As in life, as in death, as we know it, life is renewed and will continue to be renewed. God has made his promises to us. Amen.